Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Jolene Wynn, and today I'm going to talk to you guys about how to talk to your youth about pornography. I want to take this opportunity just to thank Leading Saints for allowing me this opportunity to chat with y'all and to teach you some things, and hopefully everybody will leave with some tools that you can start applying immediately to help this go a little bit better. So thank you to Leading Saints. And I want to start just by introducing myself so that you guys know who I am and why I'm here talking to you today. So, like I said, my name is Jolene, and I am a certified life coach for women who have a spouse addicted to pornography. I am a member of the LDS faith. I grew up LDS, and my husband and I were married in the temple, and we had been married for about 5 or 6 years when he came and confessed to me that he had been secretly addicted to pornography for our whole marriage. And I had no idea. And so it was several more years of relapses before he was finally able to overcome that. And I kind of went on my own journey of learning how to work through everything that goes along with having a husband addicted to pornography. And when I did, that is when I decided to become a life coach and to help other women going through the same experience. So that is what I do now. I am a stay-at-home mom of 5 and still married to my husband, and I am also a life coach, and I do that full time as well. So I'm just super passionate about this topic. And so today I wanted to help you, youth leaders specifically, know how to talk to pornography to the youth. Because I know from experience that talking about pornography can be kind of a hot mess. So today I'm going to give you guys some tools to help you do this more effectively, help you do this so it's not awkward, and help you understand the nature of what our kids are facing and how you can approach it in a more effective and better way to help you, especially in a way that'll help you actually create relationships with the youth that improve. Okay. Usually we think that talking about difficult subjects is going to make the relationship that we have decrease and get worse, but this is actually going to help you have a better relationship with your youth. And I'm going to show you guys how to do that today. So on here, this is just my information in case you guys need it. Okay. All right. So before we start talking about it, I really want to help you guys get a better understanding of why this is something we need to talk about. Okay, I want to give you guys a better understanding of where we are today. So I know we're not doing this live, but I want to encourage you guys I'm going to ask these questions. I want to encourage you to answer this in your brain, and then I'm going to give you the answer. Okay, if you guys had to guess, what percentage of boys have seen porn by the age of 18? I want you to just think about it for a second. Okay, now I'm going to give you the answer. It's actually higher than 90%. Okay? Over 90% of boys have seen porn by the age of 18. Okay? So ladies, of youth leaders who teach ladies, the girls, don't phase out, because here's the question for you. What percentage of girls have seen porn by the age of 18? What are your thoughts? Just answer it in your own head, and I'm going to give you guys the answer. It's over 60%. This used to be a much more drastic spread. It has gotten increasingly higher for girls over the last couple of years. So ladies, this is important to remember as we're teaching youth. Pornography is no longer a problem that only boys are having. We are increasingly seeing more and more girls, teenage girls, addicted to porn. Okay, and we see that by this. This is an increasing number. So over 90% of boys, over 60% of girls have seen porn by the age of 18. Okay, now, before all the leaders of the deacons and beehives, what do we call those now? Not deacons and beehives, but the 11, 12-year-olds, right? Before you guys all phase out and think of this as like a priest Laurel 18-year-old problem, what is the average age of exposure to porn? Do you guys know? I want you to think about it in your brain. What is the average age of exposure to porn? See if you know the answer, and I'll tell you. The answer is 11. Kind of sad when you think about it. Like, even before kids leave primary, most of them have seen porn. And that's the average. That's not even the youngest. I have clients whose husbands started seeing it when they were 9. Okay, this is a problem for both boys and girls, all of the youth, 11 to 18 and up. Okay, that's why it's so important to talk about today. Okay, this is just another interesting fact question. Okay, I hope you guys don't feel like you're taking a quiz. This is just to help you guys kind of understand why we're talking about this today. So, there's a certain percentage of boys and a certain percentage of girls who are exposed to group sex online. Okay, what do you think that is? What percentage of boys and what percentage of girls have been exposed to group sex online? %69 of boys and 57% of girls have been exposed to group sex online. That's not even technically within these categories. It's not of this 90% and of this 60%. This is just in general. Okay? I know it's shocking, right? And this is the one that's super fascinating. What percentage of teens have done something to hide their online activity from their parents? I was actually surprised when I read this. Okay. Let me see if you guys have a guess. Okay. Think of it in your mind. What percentage of teens have done something to hide their online activity from their parents? You guys ready? 71. Okay. This is a huge problem. And I know it can seem really overwhelming. So that's what I want to help you guys today. I want to help you know how to address this with your youth. And I'm going to give you guys some really good tips and tools in order to do that. Okay. Because I want you to feel prepared. I don't want you to feel, this can feel very heavy and overwhelming and like we've got no shot, but I promise we can do it. And that's what I'm going to help you guys do today. Okay. One of the things that I want to bring up is that we used to, when I was growing up, back in the dark ages, we used to talk about pornography once a year, and it would be this lesson in Sunday school, and it was mostly that you shouldn't watch porn, right? And that you should just avoid it. And it was something that the young men got taught a lot more than the young women. I don't recall having a lot of young women lessons about this. I remember every time that we would have general conference, we would ask, when I was a teenager, we would ask the boys, we would say, did you get to talk about porn? And they would say, yep. And that was about it. But it was never something that we were taught what to do with when we saw it. It was simply that we should avoid it. And that is no longer the route that we can take. Okay. You guys, this is what's happening. This is where our kids are right now. They are seeing porn every single day. And it is no longer something they can avoid. It is not even something they have to search out. It is being sent to them in a direct message or in a text or in a photo from a friend. It's being shown to them. Someone say, hey, come look at this, and then they see it. It's not even something people have to search out now. It is being given to them directly on their phones or in their lives. And so that is what I want to really stress today, is that we have to change the way that we are addressing this with the youth, because the way that we used to do it is no longer a viable option. It's just not realistic. We have to give our youth better tools to handle this situation, and that starts with us. Okay? So I want to start by defining pornography. And this is going to be one of the biggest tools that you can do with your youth, okay? Help them to know what pornography is. And that sounds really basic, but what I want to offer is that a lot of times when you take this, for example, when you think of pornography, what comes to your brain? Like what idea do you have of what pornography is? For me, I still think of it as either a Playboy magazine or of Pornhub, which is the main porn website across the world. Okay. That's kind of what I think of pornography as. The importance of getting your youth to be able to understand what pornography is and where they see it is huge, because it's kind of one of those things that they're being exposed to so much now that if they don't understand that what they are seeing is pornography, they won't think of it that way. They won't register it that way. It'll just be normal to them, and they won't categorize it as porn, and their brain won't see it as a problem. So it's super important to define what pornography is with your youth. It can really help them grasp what it is that they're seeing and how they should approach it. Does that make sense? Okay, so here's the actual definition of pornography. Okay, pornography is printed or visual material containing the explicit description or display of sexual organs or activity intended to stimulate erotic rather than aesthetic or emotional feelings. Okay, there's a couple key things that I want to hit here. One is that it's printed or visual. Okay, and it either is a description or a display. One of the things that, again, we think of as porn is we usually think of images or movies, but it can also be written. Okay, it can be, I'm going to go over some examples in just a minute, but it can be books. Okay, and that's something that's super crucial for kids to understand, that it's not just pictures. They can be reading pornography. That's something really, really crucial. And here's the other part of it, is that it is intended to stimulate erotic feelings. Sorry, I missed that word. It is intended to stimulate erotic feelings. Anything that is intended to stimulate erotic feelings is pornography. I have a lot of clients who will ask me, well, what is pornography? Right? And is it only Pornhub, or is it only magazines, or what is it? This is it. Okay? Anything that is intended to stimulate erotic feelings, that's pornography. So I want to go through a couple of examples that I would encourage you guys to do with your youth, so that they, again, can really grasp what it is that they're seeing and categorize it that way so that they can know how to respond to it. Okay? So here we go. It can be text messages. You guys, it doesn't even have to be a photo. It can be a text sent from a friend. A text message can be porn. Pictures, for sure. The number of children that have nude photos of themselves or have sent them to someone else is shocking. Okay? Photos, absolutely, of yourself, of someone else, that is pornography. Okay? Song lyrics. Like I said, whether they're written down or whether you're listening to them, you guys, the lyrics on the radio are not good. And a lot of them are pornographic in nature. They are intended to stimulate erotic feelings. Okay? TikTok videos. You guys, get your kids off TikTok if you can, because it is the devil's lair. Okay, that's a whole other thing. But TikTok has all of these challenges. If you guys don't know anything about TikTok, go look it up a little bit. TikTok has a lot of challenges that are pornographic in nature. It may not be taking a picture. It could be a challenge in that you move your body in a certain way, even if you're fully clothed, that is intended to stimulate erotic feelings. Okay, a TikTok challenge, a dance in a certain way, can be pornographic. Okay, literature. You guys ever heard of 50 Shades of Grey? You guys, that is porn. And this is where I think it's especially important, ladies, youth leaders, for girls. It's especially important to know this is because the porn industry targets men and women differently, girls and boys differently. They know that boys are more likely to watch videos and pictures. Girls are more likely to read. And so they produce erotic novels on purpose geared toward girls, for females, because that is what is more likely for girls to do. So you might I just want you to be aware that your girls are probably facing different pressures for pornography. They're facing pornography in a different way. They could be. Women, it tends to be more literature. Men, it tends to be more visual. So that's just something to be aware of. Magazines, ads, apps. There are apps on your phone, even games that will have a play it nude feature. Okay. I would really encourage you to get to know the apps that your kids are using, your youth are using, and to do some research on what those apps are, what games they're on, because this can be a sneaky way that it slides in. Another way that happens a lot is with certain modes. Now, I am not a technology guru, but I do know that even on Instagram, they have a mode and it's called a vanish mode. So someone can send you a direct message. If you turn on vanish mode, someone can send you a direct message, and as soon as you read it, it deletes. So even though parents have filters on, or even though they have an open relationship with their kid and are checking it, kids are getting around it. The apps are working against you guys and encouraging this type of behavior. So that's something to be aware of again. Instagram reels, wet t-shirt contests, podcasts, okay? Anything that is intended to stimulate erotic feelings, it can be something that they're listening to. Audiobooks. There are so many ways that they are flooded with this. And my point in bringing this up is not to make you feel overwhelmed, again, but it is to let you know that this is what we need to talk to our youth about, and let them know that pornography isn't just sitting at a computer and searching it out in particular. Okay, they are facing pornography every single day on their phone. If you have a kid with a phone, they are seeing pornography every single day. And it looks a lot like this. Okay, it's not always what we think it looks like. And it's really important to become aware of it, because otherwise we get desensitized to it. We think it's totally normal and we don't think of it as a problem. Okay. Okay. So first, define it for your youth. Help your youth define what pornography is. And then the second thing that we need to be doing is teaching the youth what to do and what to expect when they see it. Like I said before, the conversation that we used to have was you just need to avoid it. And that is no longer the conversation that we can keep having. We have to tell our youth what to do and what to expect when they see it. And they are going to see it. Okay, it's not an if, it's when. And honestly, as soon as they have access to any type of device, that's when it is. Okay, even if it's a parent's device, right? Or they go to a friend's house and their friend has a device. You guys, they are just constantly flooded, and they need to know what to do when they see it. Okay, it is no longer acceptable. It is no longer helpful for them to think of it as an if, but you have to help them know that they are going to see it and help them understand what's going to happen when they do. Okay. One of the best things that you can do is tell them to immediately turn it off, right? If they see it on an app, turn off the app, delete the app if you can get them to do it, delete the text message, block the friend, block the Instagram account, whatever it is. Tell them to immediately, not later, but immediately take action to delete it. And then here's the second part that we usually forget. And then they need to tell someone. That's the part we usually don't get to. Usually we tell youth, okay, when you see it, if you see it, turn it off, walk away. But you need to turn it off and tell somebody. And I'm going to get into why that's so important later. But one of the biggest things, the biggest reason is that addiction thrives in secrecy. Okay. And so we need to get it out in the open and help kids understand that they're not a terrible person for seeing it. Okay. And that's kind of what I want to talk to next. Okay. So yes, they are going to see it. Here's what they should do when they do see it. And here's what they need to expect. They are looking at something or experiencing something that is directly intended and created in order to stimulate a physical response. It is intended and created to elicit a sexual erotic response in them. And so we need to teach our youth that if that happens, if they see porn, that they are totally normal for the response that they have to it. Too often our youth are not prepared for the physical reaction that they have to viewing pornography, and it makes them feel like a terrible person. They feel like because they had this physical reaction, this hormonal chemical reaction, that means there's something wrong with them because they know porn is bad. And so if they see porn and have a good feeling about it, then they can't reconcile that. They don't know what that means, and they must think that there's something wrong with them because they're having a positive reaction to something they know to be negative. Does that make sense? So we have to do a better job of teaching our youth that their physical response to pornography is completely normal. In fact, it means that their body is working exactly as it's designed to work. God created it to work that way. It's just being triggered by something that is wrong, okay? And that their response is normal and that does not make them a bad person. And it's super important to teach them this because if they feel like they are a bad person, then they get stuck in a shame cycle and it's super hard to break. Okay, I want to dive into the shame cycle a little bit just so you guys understand a little bit more of why it's so important to get them to talk about it and why it's so important to help them understand this, that their response, their physical response is normal and does not make them a bad person, even though porn is wrong. Okay, so here's what this is. This is called the shame cycle. Okay, so this is what happens. If they see something, they have, whether it's handed to them or they search it out, okay? If they feel shame and guilt, and then they don't immediately tell someone, this is the cycle they get stuck in, right? We feel, if you've ever done something bad, this is what happens. You're very familiar, right? You feel ashamed, you feel guilty, you feel ashamed. What happens is we don't want to tell anybody, right? We have a hard enough time admitting it to ourselves, let alone someone else. And so what happens is we want to keep it a secret, pretend like it didn't happen, and maybe it'll go away, right? But what that tends to do is that also makes us isolate. Whenever we do something bad, whenever we do something wrong, or we're exposed to something that's bad or wrong, then when we have that secrecy, when we want to keep it a secret, we tend to isolate ourselves because we don't want anybody else to find out. Right? It's kind of like the kid who hides in the corner when they've done something wrong. They want to isolate themselves in the hopes that they don't get in trouble for it, that nobody finds out what they did, right? But when that happens, if you're in that isolation, in that secrecy, and then you have another trigger, right? You see it again, that's what leads to acting out. Okay, and acting out in this case would be viewing pornography again. And then that cycle just keeps repeating because after you view it, then you feel ashamed and guilty. Okay, so especially if someone is being exposed to pornography and they're not searching it out, we really want to make sure that we teach our kids to tell someone about it so that they don't get stuck in this cycle, right, of starting with secrecy, but also to let them know that there's nothing wrong with them. Okay, and I mean this even if they sought it out. Okay, one of the biggest lies that our brain tells us that Satan really works hard to tell us is that we're, beyond hope, that there's no redemption. I think one of the ways that we hear this is once an addict, always an addict, right? That's very much Satan's plan, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But we want our youth to understand that even though they've done something bad, it doesn't mean that they're used goods, and it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with them, and it doesn't mean that they're beyond hope. Right? I mean, that's the greatest thing about Jesus is that there's always hope. There is always redemption. There is always grace, and there is always the atonement. And so we need to teach our kids that they are not the sum of their worst mistakes. We have to teach our kids that we know that they are capable of more than when they give in to temptation. We have to help them feel that they are better than their sin, and help them understand that they are not their sin. Do you guys follow me? Just because, I'm trying to think of how to word this, but one of the greatest lies, like I said, is really that connection of what we do with who we are, right? They think that because I did this bad thing, I am a bad person. And that's what we really, really, really want to break, okay? We want to see if we can help them even avoid getting into this cycle, because once they get in this, it's much harder to get out of. Not impossible, but harder, which is again why it's so important to teach them to tell someone about it, and to teach them that even if they see it and they have a response to it, it doesn't mean that they're a bad person. Okay? They are not a bad person for having the response that was exactly targeted for them to have by what they were seeing. Okay? The next thing that I want to teach you guys about that's super helpful in teaching your youth about pornography is to understand the nature of pornography addiction. Again, this is so crucial because it's very tempting to think that because pornography is bad and we view it either on accident or intentionally, that we are a terrible person and there's, we're the worst and scum of the earth and all of those things. And I really want to teach you guys, I know this is different than anything you've ever been taught, but I want to teach you about what really is the root of pornography addiction so that you can help hopefully will help you understand it more so you can teach your youth about it and help them see that there is hope and that there is actually a lot of action they can take to overcome it if they are addicted. Okay, because like I said, just like that shame cycle, right, that we were looking at, where'd it go? Okay. This shame cycle is the addiction cycle. Okay. So once they get into it, it's much harder for them to get out of it. Right. So that's why we try to avoid it if we can. But once they're in it, that is what perpetuates addiction. Okay. So that's what I want to talk to you guys about today. Okay. Pornography addiction is a symptom of a deeper problem. Okay. Hear me out when I say this. Most of us think that pornography addiction is the problem, but pornography addiction is a symptom. Okay. My husband was addicted to pornography for many, many years. And what he recognized and what I have seen with every single one of my clients with their husbands is that there's something that they don't want to feel. And what they're trying to do is distract themselves from it. This is especially true with teenagers. Okay. As they seek connection, if they're not feeling connected, if they're feeling rejected, if they're feeling isolated and alone, they're going to want to distract. And what is the number one thing we use to distract? You guys, it's our phones. The number one thing that we use to distract and the number one things teenagers use to distract from how they're feeling is their phones. Think about what you do when you're stressed out. Women, we tend to eat or go online shopping, or we scroll Instagram. Men tend to view porn because it also has this nice physical response, right? You kind of get an uplift from it. There is a positive hormonal response, right? It's a very appealing thing for your body to crave because it has that positive hormonal response. Okay. So pornography addiction itself is not about sex. It's about a deeper problem, an emotional problem that needs to be dealt with. And this is simply the distraction from the emotional pain. Okay, this is why it typically, even if it starts at a young age, why it perpetuates, right, is in that shame and guilt cycle because kids are exposed to it before they know how to handle it. So they feel all the guilt, they feel all the shame, they feel the secrecy, they feel all the hurt and the pain and the rejection. They don't know what to do with it. And so they want to distract from it. And an easy thing that is free and accessible and being handed to you 24/7 is porn. Like I said, you don't even have to go out and find it. It is being sent directly to you. So it is very easy to distract yourself with something that feels better. And often that is pornography, okay? But it's very important to understand that the root of pornography addiction is not about sex. It's not about kids that are too sexual. It's not because there's something wrong with them sexually. It's because they're trying to compensate, trying to distract themselves from something deeper inside. And that's the root of the problem. Okay. Now, the reason that I want to bring this up is because I want you guys to know that it's important to encourage your youth who are struggling with an addiction to encourage both spiritual and professional help. Okay. It's not just that they have a lot of sexual feelings. It's that they have something deeper they don't know how to handle, and they need someone who knows what they're doing, a professional, to help them do it. So if you have a youth that you know of that's struggling with this, whether they come to you and tell you, or another youth comes to you and tells you, yes, absolutely, there is a spiritual component with this, but there's also a professional component because the pornography addiction itself is just a symptom of a deeper problem that we really need a professional to get involved in. Okay. So the church has great services through that, the LDS services, and you can go talk to the bishop about that and get clearer help with that. But I really want to encourage you guys to encourage this for your youth, that it requires a spiritual and possibly 99.9% of the time, a professional in there with it. I think we do our youth a disservice when we tell them that they can pray harder and read their scriptures more and become more spiritual, and that's going to help them overcome it. I don't think that's a bad thing. Hear me out, okay? I don't think that's a bad thing to encourage, but I think we do them a disservice, absolutely, when we don't tell them that pornography addiction is something they need to seek professional help for. It's kind of the same thing as mental health, right? We don't tell kids to pray away their depression or their anxiety. We tell them to go to a doctor. We tell them to get professional help. And that's what we have to start doing with pornography. If you struggle with pornography, there are people who can help you overcome that. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you sexually. There's something deeper, and you need a professional to come help you do that. And that's our job as a leader, to lead our youth in that direction. Okay? As I said, addiction is bred in secrecy and isolation, which is why it's so crucial to teach youth to tell people when they've seen it. And it's so crucial, if someone tells you that they have a problem with it, to make sure that that stays an open conversation. Addiction just really thrives in secret. Okay. And so if we want to keep the conversation around pornography open, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute, so that we can try and avoid the addiction cycle going on longer than it already has. Okay. And again, like I said before, it's really important to teach kids that there is always hope. Okay. Even in an addiction cycle, I do not believe that once an addict, always an addict. That's not the atonement. In fact, we are taught in the scriptures that our weaknesses can become our strengths. Absolutely, they can. The things that we struggle with the most can be a thing of the past, a thing that we use to help other people. My husband is a great example of this. Like, our life is a great example of this. He struggled with a pornography addiction. He's completely past it now. And now I use that, and he uses that to help others understand it and overcome it. That was his weakness previously, and now it is a strength. God can do that. It is important for our youth to know that just because they struggle with this now, even if they are addicted, that doesn't have to be the rest of their life. We have to give them hope and understand that there is more to them than what they're dealing with right now. That's not who they are. This is not a true reflection of their best self. And we need to help them have hope. We have to hold that hope for them when they don't have it. We have to bring that to them. That is our responsibility as a leader, to see the potential in them, to know that they are not their best self, but that's not the end, right? That where they are right now, the struggle is not who they are. It's simply something they're experiencing, and it's completely solvable. Okay. It just might take the right people. Okay. One more thing that I want to mention is that Satan is pushing addiction. Why? Because it attacks our agency, right? When we are in that addiction cycle, when there is a physical chemical response, whether that's to pornography or to something else, some other substance, that is something that doesn't take away our agency, but it feels like it does. Right? Then we are dealing not only with the emotional trauma, with the emotional stuff, we're also dealing with a physical response. There's an emotional cycle to it, and there's a physical cycle to it. And that's why Satan is pushing this so hard. He's pushing this in all areas, but especially pornography, as we see with the girls, with the exposure of social media. It's just flooding our kids, and the rise in use by both boys and girls, and even just with the conversation, right? You guys have heard now that pornography used to be something very taboo, very wrong. Only a few people did it, and it was not something that was healthy. And now it's encouraged. It's not only accepted, it's encouraged as normal, healthy sexual behavior, right? I deal with this all day long. One of the main critiques that I get about what I do is, well, porn is not a big deal. Why are you making such a big deal out of it? Right? Satan is attacking us and wants to do it through addiction. He is pushing addiction because it limits our agency. It hits our agency. So that is something to just be super aware of, and why this is something that we are facing so much right now. Okay. Okay. The very best way that you guys can help your youth with pornography is keeping the conversation open. Or opening it. Okay. Some of us have a very closed conversation around pornography with our youth. Like I said, it comes around once a year in the manual. Maybe you hear a general conference talk about it, but these kids are facing it every single day on their phones and in their school and in their life. And the average age of exposure is 11. We're already behind, right? When the youth come into the youth program, we are already behind. Okay. We have to open the conversation. Okay. And the truth is that your approach to this conversation is what's going to make all of the difference. Okay. It's not the topic. We think that pornography is just uncomfortable because it's pornography. It's not the topic. Think about anything that you talk about with two different people, okay? If you were going to talk about sex, okay, and you were going to talk about it with your spouse, or you were going to talk about it with your dad, it's not the topic. It might be totally fine. You might feel totally comfortable talking to your spouse about it and be super uncomfortable talking to your dad about it. It's not the topic. It's how you approach it. Okay. And your approach matters. If you come into a conversation with the youth thinking, oh my gosh, this is so awkward. I hate talking about this. I don't know how to do this. They're not going to listen anyway. What do I know? All of that, it's going to come across, right? The energy that you approach a conversation with really matters. I mean, I've been talking about pornography for like 30 minutes plus. I don't feel awkward at all. Okay. It's all in how you approach the conversation with your youth. Okay. The more open you are, the better the conversation is going to go. Okay. So if you feel awkward, so will they. And if you remember nothing else about this, if you get all nervous and you don't know anything else about how to open this conversation with your youth, then I want to encourage you to remember this one thing, and that is vulnerability is crucial. Okay. Vulnerability is going to be the thing that connects you to your youth. We have to stop teaching kids and approaching this conversation as if kids are the only ones that see this, kids are the only ones that are addicted to this, kids are the only ones that struggle with this, and what have you, because that puts us on a very different plane, right? It's a very us versus them. Then kids feel attacked and defensive. Okay. And if they're already struggling with it, it's just going to increase that shame and guilt that they feel, which is just going to keep them in that shame cycle, right? So what I would encourage you guys to do is be vulnerable. Be open, you guys. Adult men in and out of the church struggling with pornography is 50% or more. Okay? This is not just a child issue. This is not something that just our youth are facing. And I'm not saying that you have to go confess all of your sins to your youth. Okay? You don't have to do that. But what I'm saying is you can open the conversation and say, you know what? I see this too. I have a phone. I'm alive in the world today. I see pornography. Here's where I see it. Where do you guys see it? When was the last time you saw it? I saw it yesterday. It doesn't even have to be you confessing that you're addicted, because you don't have to do that, okay? Unless you feel like you should, right? But I'm saying that you should be vulnerable and open with these kids and not make them feel like they are wrong or bad, or that this is something they'll just grow out of, and that they can, if they can just power through, then once they hit adulthood, they'll be fine. Or once they get on a mission, it will magically disappear, because it won't. Okay? Because it's a deeper problem. Okay? There's a root, there's a cause that is creating the drive for that. Okay. And we need to help our kids understand that they're not alone in this. And that requires vulnerability on our part. Youth leaders, I know that this is a struggle. I know this is hard, but we have to do this. That is our responsibility to these kids. It's our responsibility to feel a little uncomfortable, to be more vulnerable, so that those kids understand that they're not alone. Okay. That they're not the only ones that struggle with this. Girls and boys, okay? It's really, really vital. Again, if you remember nothing else, vulnerability is key to having a better conversation with the youth about pornography, okay? Another thing that I want to offer is that you can stress the importance of something without making it heavy. Okay. A lot of times we think that when we talk about pornography or the law of chastity, it really needs to be this heavy topic, because we really need the kids to just know how important it is. But who wants to hear over and over and over again how heavy and important something is? Like, as I said, if you are already feeling guilt about something and shame about something, all that's going to do is make you feel worse and keep you in that cycle. So I want to offer that it's totally possible for you to stress the importance of something without making it a super heavy, depressing topic. It doesn't have to be heavy. It doesn't have to be something that you come with this like, all right, we're going to sit down and we're going to have the talk kind of a situation, which is how I feel like it has been when we only talk about it once a year. We tend to like really stress it, make it really important, make it very heavy. And what I want to offer is that you increase the frequency of this conversation And that's going to help it seem less heavy, and it doesn't make it any less important. Okay? So just because you're bringing it up in a casual daily conversation doesn't mean it's not important. And your kids know that. Your kids understand that. So you need to understand it as well, that you don't have to make it heavy just to get your point across. Okay? And then just like I mentioned, we need to talk about it more frequently. Rather than having a once a year conversation, a once a year lesson where everyone's just sitting and looking at the floor, it needs to be part of our daily interaction with those kids. We need to be talking about it in seminary, on the rides to school, on the rides to and from youth activities. We need to be talking about it in the hallways at church. It needs to be something that we're constantly talking about because they're constantly seeing it. Again, it doesn't have to be heavy. It can be very, very normal, right? It can be very much, hey, when was the last time you saw it? Or you won't believe what I saw today. I can't believe blah, blah, blah. Okay. It doesn't have to be a sit down talk experience. Okay. Another thing I want to encourage you guys to do is use resources. The church has such great resources, and there are so many amazing non-LDS resources for pornography, to give you statistics, to give you help and resources, books and articles and podcasts that are all geared toward helping us understand these, understand pornography, the root of it, how to deal with it, how to address it, how to talk about it. There are so many. So when you feel like you're all alone and you don't know what to do, don't be afraid to use resources. Super powerful and super important. And I think especially as members of the LDS Church, we get very hesitant to use any resources that aren't specifically created by the church. Now, I'm not advocating for any in particular, but I have found so many amazing resources that don't go against our teachings at all, but help us really understand pornography at the root. Because like I said, it's not just a spiritual problem. It's something that lots of people do professionally. It's what I do professionally. And there are so many great resources if we would just be willing to broaden our eyes a little bit and use the resources that are available within the church and without. Okay? And another thing I want to encourage you is to pray for guidance, especially if you know of a youth who is struggling with this. Pray for guidance. Pray for whether or not you should, or encourage them to tell their parents. Encourage them to encourage yourself to have, pray for how to know how to talk to your kids about it. Pray to know or to have someone share with you something they're struggling with, right? Pray for the bishop to know what to do when someone comes and tells him about what they're struggling with. Prayer can go a long way, and it can help us. You guys know your youth better than I do. I don't know your youth. You do. You know their names. You know their struggles. So pray for them individually, and it's going to go a long way. All right. That is all I have for you guys today. I know that was a lot, but what I really want to leave you guys with is hope. You guys, there is hope. Pornography is a very real issue that we're facing. I don't want to downplay that, but it's also something that we can absolutely handle if we are open about it and willing to have the hard conversations. If you remember nothing else, I want to encourage y'all to be vulnerable and to be open. And to understand that the way that we used to do things is no longer working. We have to be willing to pivot. We have to be humble. We have to be teachable. We have to be willing to shift so that we offer our youth the best that we can, because that's why we're here. We are here to teach our youth. We are here for them. And I really want to encourage y'all to help your youth really understand that they are more than the mistakes that they make. They are more than their worst choices. We are more than our worst choices. And there is always hope in Jesus Christ. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Again, thank you to Leading Saints for having me on. And if you guys have any questions about any of this, I want to encourage y'all to reach out to me. I will put my email address right here in case you guys need it, okay? coach@jolenewin.com, okay? If you guys have any questions about any of this, I would absolutely love it. Just shoot me an email, and I would love to answer your questions.